Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving. It's your host, Seerat here, and today we will be interviewing an extraordinary guest, Brooks Gibbs. He's a resilience educator and has presented at 3,000 schools to spread his message to students, parents, and educators. He's curating a course called Rethinking Bullying to educate teachers. Brooks has created a children's card game, Squabbles, and it's my family's favorite game. Brooks, please tell us about yourself.
Hi, Seerat. It's so good to see you, Seerat. I wonder, what grade are you in?
I'm in eighth grade.
Absolutely love your spirit. You're so upbeat and you're so smart. And thank you so much. And I'm glad you enjoy the game. When I was creating that game, I was hoping to take a playful approach to a painful problem. And that's really what I do. It's what I'm all about. Now, basically, when we have problems with people, there are typically three reasons why they're being mean. They're trying to bother us, joke with us, or they're hurt by us. And so that game, as you've discovered, teaches us to, if they're bothering us, be unfazed, whatever. So if they're hurt by us, learn to apologize. And if they're joking with us, learn to laugh. And so, Seerat, what I do is I try to communicate mental health principles and conflict resolution principles to kids. And I've been doing that for 25 years this year. I'm old enough to be your dad. And I keep doing the same thing over and over. I got started when I was 19. I'm now 43, and it's just a joy. I'm typically in a new city every week. I do school assemblies. I don't have a private practice, but I've done thousands of interventions with kids, helping them with their social and emotional problems. I have a PhD in social psychology, but I call myself a resilience educator because that's really what I do. I train, I teach, and I write, and I produce games to help transfer these social emotional principles to kids.
Wow, that's so cool. Today, I would like to explore the topic of bullying and resilience. We cannot always change others, but we can add techniques to our toolbox to use. We'll learn how to navigate the chaos, turn negative situations into opportunities for personal growth, and then step forward confidently. Before we dive in, I'm interested in your journey. Why did you become a resilience educator?
I realized early on when I was 19 that the anti bullying movement was taking off throughout the United States. I lived in Littleton, Colorado, which was the home of the Columbine shooting, which is a really sad day in our nation's history. And after that terrible tragedy, schools everywhere were saying, okay, we're going to really try to figure out how to stop bullying. And I realized that the solutions everyone was offering were not really helping the target or what we might call the victim. It wasn't helping them directly, at least. It was helping them indirectly. So typically, the solutions people would offer were empower bystanders. And they would give messages to kids saying, if you see someone being picked on, it is your responsibility to intervene and stop it, or you're as guilty as the one doing the mean behavior. I thought, well, that's not life giving. Plus, kids might really get hurt if they try to intervene in someone else's quarrel. There's proverbs against that. So it defied wisdom and logic. The other one was we need to pass laws and we need schools to be liable for a child's emotional well being. And we need to give teachers and counselors and administrators teeth. And that's what law provides. It provides prosecutorial power to say, this is against the law, you're going to get punished. And I thought, well, that's not going to help either because you can't legislate niceness. It was Aristotle who said 2,400 years ago, one thing government can never do is make its people nice or moral. And so I thought that's not going to work. And there were other things like hallway policing and and kids reporting anonymously. So I said, but enough of this. What would really help kids if we could teach them how not to get offended. And if we could cure a child of offense, then the conflict will cease to exist. So how do I do that? And I simply went through logical inquiry. I thought about my own life and what helped me when I was a teenager. My grandmother Jody told me that no one can make you angry, no one can hurt your feelings, no one can upset you unless you let them, meaning your mind is such a powerful organ in the body that it processes what people say in such a way you decide whether you're disturbed by it. And I thought that helped me when I was in high school. I wonder if I can teach that to kids. And ultimately, I discovered that's a concept called resilience. And so, resilience education for bullying prevention was the direction I chose to go. I found an amazing, God sent mentor named school psychologist Izzy Kalman. And he really helped direct my efforts and educated me. So, I started reteaching his principles, played the games that he invented, and added my own spin to everything. And schools loved it, and they hired me and they recommended me. And so that's what I've been doing. I got into it by trying to solve a problem in the most efficient, simple way possible. And it's worked.
Wow. Um, Earlier you touched upon your game Squabbles, and that reminded me that in that game there are like three main motivations for bullying. So there's hurting, bothering, and joking. So how can we identify which situation belongs in each category?
Yeah, sometimes it's a little difficult because it could be a combination of all three. So I like to diagram that in a Venn diagram, meaning all three are touching the others. And sometimes someone's hurt by you, so they're using humor to psychologically dominate you. Those are the three at work in once. And so I always tell kids if they're hurt by you, I have emojis that kind of show what hurt looks like on the face. And if they're upset with you, if they're hurt, the best thing to do is just say, "Are you mad at me?" Find out why, and then just say, "I'm sorry for that." You don't have to make excuses. Don't shift blame. Just humbly apologize. So I try to teach kids that through the game. Also, if they're joking with you, they're probably laughing. So I have a kind of a funny laugh emoji. And you should be able to take and make a joke about yourself. Yeah, you think I'm fat? Yeah, I don't have to wear a sweater in the winter. It's awesome. I'm like a human crock pot. Or you think my forehead is big? I think it's more of a five head. It's a family disability. My mom's hairline starts in the middle of the top of her head or something. You should be able to laugh. You don't have to get so upset. And it's really important. And then, of course, the bothering one is classic sibling rivalry. When it happens at school, we call it bullying, but when it happens at home, we call it rivalry. And that's when someone loves to bother you. You told your brother to stay out of your room, but your brother goes in your room. You told him to not touch your stuff, but he messes with your stuff. You told him to stop being annoying, and he chews noisy chips in your ear. What's the solution? Don't be bothered. If his goal is to bother you and you're bothered, you lose and he wins. But if you view it as a game and you play in winning mode, you're not going to be bothered. He's not going to win. And when people lose games, they want to stop. It's beautiful because I don't have to use the word bullying to talk about these forms of aggression or motivations behind aggression. I just talk about human behavior. It's a very educational, psychological, scientific approach, and not a pseudo psychological, fake science approach by trying to call the person you don't like a bully and considering yourself an innocent victim. Yeah, that's just not, I know that's what the world says, but that's not what science says. It doesn't make any sense. And so I try to call the behaviors what they are, and I try to focus on the motivations of what they are. They're trying to bother you, joke with you, or they're hurt by you. Since I created that game, I added a fourth motivation. And I don't think there's any other motivations beyond these four, but the fourth one is criticism. Some people, they're not trying to joke with you, they're not trying to bother you, and they're not hurt by you, but they're trying to help you improve. They're pointing out a flaw that you need to know about. And this is what teachers do, and coaches do, and parents do. But so many kids say, my teacher's bullying, my coach is bullying me. I've never heard a kid say, my parents bullying me, but it's probably possible. They're not actually. They're just they're taking a critical approach to help you improve, and you have a difficult time taking criticism. So the solution to that is to tell them how much you appreciate it, even if it's spiteful or not delivered with grace or kindness. You can still say, thank you for letting me know. I'll consider it.
That's really nice way of distinguishing and figuring out how you respond to each one. And I actually did not know there was a fourth one, criticism. So I'm going to check it out on your videos and books. And so now that we know why people bully from the four motivations, let's learn about who people choose to bully and their targets. I once read about a study where prisoners were shown clips of people walking in a mall and they had to choose their targets. Then the same clips were shown to psychologists, and they made a list of potential targets. And guess what? The prisoners and the psychologists' lists were 90% the same. That was really cool. So now, why do you think people bully?
I'm curious what characteristics they identified. Was it weak, or do you remember?
I remember one of the main ones being their body language, how they walked, if their head was tilted up, were they looking while walking, how they closed their door, and that like body language.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very interesting study that assumes that bullies are on the prowl looking looking for people that they can psychologically harm and get pleasure from it repeatedly over time with intent to do harm. And in other words, a sociopath. So it sounds, and this is how these studies go. If you were a sociopath, who would you target to attack? Of course, you would look at people who are weak. But when I work with students, that's never what happens. Kids, when you ask a kid, why did you do what you did? Why did you do that mean behavior to that person? And usually they say, I did that to him because he did this to me. So they don't identify as a bully or a sociopath. Which by the way, the definitions are exactly the same. If you look at the DSM-5 and you look for antisocial behavior, which also means sociopath in the DSM-4, they just changed the name a little bit to make it kinder. But essentially, a sociopath has antisocial behavior and it's intent to do harm, repeated over time, and they have a psychological power imbalance. And if you look at the definition of bullying, it's the same thing. So all the anti-bullying experts, Dan Oveas and Susan Limber, who wrote the definitions, they lifted the sociopath criteria, which is less than 1% of the population, and they gave it to this phantom we created called bully. So really, I don't think that exists except in rare cases. 99% of the problems kids face, they say, I did it because they hurt me. So it's a hurting motivation. Or I was just joking. They're comedians. We call them bullies, but they were comedians and they were just joking around. Or they were trying to bother because it was a form of entertainment, just like a sibling. They enjoy bothering. There's no major rhyme or reason of why they target unless they have a very specific motivation. It's typically hurt, though. The last thing I'll say is when I ask a kid who's been identified as a bully why they did what they did, they almost always say, I'm not a bully, I'm a victim. And so you have two parties, both claiming to be victims and both saying the other person bullied them. So we don't have a bully problem, we have a victim problem. And I tell schools all the time, if we can victim-proof students, we can bully-proof schools.
That's interesting. So how can we empower the target or the victim? And what techniques can they add to their toolbox so the bullies don't bully them?
Yeah. So I would say we need to, if it's a bothering motivation, we need to teach them how to be totally unfazed. School psychologist Izzy Kalman uses a winning and losing kind of terminology. When, let's say I'm talking to a kid and I say, when she calls you that name and you get angry and upset and your feelings are hurt, how do you feel? Do you feel like a winner or do you feel like a loser? And the kid will say, I feel like a loser. Okay. And when you feel like a loser, when she calls you those names, how does she feel? Like a winner or loser? Oh, she feels like a winner. That's right. She wants you to get upset. She's not being mean to make your day awesome. She's trying to ruin your day. She's not trying to give you good feelings inside. She's trying to hurt your feelings. And so when your day's ruined and your feelings are hurt, you lose and she wins. Do you want her to win every time she's mean to you? The kid says no. Then I say, do you want to be a perpetual loser when she plays this game with you? No. Do you want to learn how to stop losing? The kid says yes. All right. If the goal is to upset you and you get upset and lose, then the solution to win the game is to don't get upset, no matter what she says. She may make fun of your face. She may make fun of your race, your religion, or your mama, but she doesn't really care about your face, race, religion, or mama. She just cares about upsetting you. She's trying to bother you. She's a provocateur. So stop getting upset. And then the kid says, but she's pointing out my insecurities. She's pointing out my disabilities. She's saying the N word because of the color of my skin, or she's calling me the M word, midget, if she's making fun of my height. These things really hurt me. And I would say, oh, then you're going to always lose her game. Yeah, how do I win? Well, you're going to have to learn how to give up the grip of your demand that she must not, ought not, should not, better not say that. See, the reason why you're upset is because you actually believe she has no right to say that. And if you just change your belief that she has your permission to say that, it may not be moral, it may not be kind, but it's her constitutional right of free speech to say whatever the heck she wants. If you give up the grip of your demand that she must not, ought not, should not, better not say that, then you will be totally able to be unfazed. To say, oh, what's that? You think my sweater's ugly? You don't have to wear it. Have a nice day. You're not going to invite me to that party? It's all good. Whatevs. I'll do something else. So I think the best way we empower a target is to help them stop demanding that people must treat them with kindness. And once they give up that grip of their demand and they actually go to school, listen carefully, they go to school hoping people are mean, hoping people exclude them, hoping people are rude, then they actually get the opposite psychological response. They feel good, not bad, good. And the way that we do this is that we reward resilience. So, for example, I did this with my kid. I said, if someone's mean to you today and you don't get upset, I'm going to give you $1. He said, for real? I said, yeah. I said, and if someone's mean to you and you don't get upset and you're nice back to them and they start being nice back to you, in other words, you convert them from an enemy to a friend, I'm going to give you $5. I remember the first week doing this with my son, he made $43. He went to his social group. He went, it wasn't school, it was camp when I started this. He went to camp every single day, hoping someone was mean to him. And that put him in a completely different psychological mindset. And the only rule was you can't do anything to actually make people mad. Like you can't kick them in the shins. That's cheating. They have to be naturally mad. And so we reward resilience, and that puts them in a more conquering mindset. Like a boxer needs a really good sparring partner in the ring to get better at boxing. We need jerks in our life to get better at dealing with difficult people. And it's a completely different approach I take, but it's an approach that actually works for people who are vulnerable to suffering from mean behavior.
That reminded me of the ABC that I read in your book, where A was the aggression and then C was the consequence, which is like the emotional consequence. So we usually felt that after A comes C. So after someone does something to us, we immediately feel the consequence that, oh no, they said this to me, but actually in between is the belief system that, oh, I actually think that I do not look good, which is why I actually got angry at them.
Totally. Yeah, I'm very proud of you. And I love it when people reteach my stuff to me because I'm like, oh man, that's so encouraging. Very proud of you, Seerat. I know that most people don't know this. Most people say, she made me angry. She hurt my feelings. She upset me. But according to Dr. Albert Ellis, who invented the ABC theory of emotions, he says, no, yes, they were aggressive. And yes, you had an emotional consequence of your hurt feelings. But in between A and C is the letter B. A, the aggression has to flow through B, your belief system, before C, an emotional consequence emerges. Because here's a way to prove that's true. That same mean girl can say the same mean thing to another girl, and that girl doesn't care. But when she says it to you, the exact same mean thing, she says it to you, you get upset. It's not what she says, the aggression, but what you believe. And that's why I always put the emphasis on give up the grip of your demands. Because if you believe that she has no right, she must not, ought not, should not, better not say that, then you're going to emerge an emotional consequence that is negative. But if you actually say, I hope, I believe she should say that because she always says that. I expect her, I believe that she has the right to be mean if she wants to. Then you have positive emotional consequences. Really, if someone wants to help someone stop suffering, don't focus on the A, what happened. Don't focus on the C, how do you feel, what's your emotional consequence. Spend most of your time focusing on the belief and helping the child give up the grip of their demands that it must not happen. I heard you in another podcast ask a person, what is mental health? And they had a beautiful answer to it. I love the answer. I have my own answer, but it matches perfectly with your former guest. But my answer to mental health is the ability to adjust well to a harsh reality. And if you cannot adjust well, if you cannot accept that harsh reality happened, that mean person is in my life, and you can't adjust to it well, you're going to suffer in your mental health. But you can thrive in your mental health if you realize I am capable of accepting that this mean person is in my life, or they're targeting me with humor, or they're hurt by me, and I accept that. I can apologize. If you can be good at these skills, then your mental health will be just as good.
Yes, and that reminded me of another thing from the audiobook of Squabble Elements, where he said about Grandma Jody, and that she says that you would first go through my brain before you go to my heart. So you first have to go through what I believe and what I think before you can actually hurt me.
That's right. I love Grandma Jody. She's no longer with us, but I did her eulogy at her funeral, and I talked about how wise she was and how she didn't have a college education, yet she taught me more about mental health than any professor I ever had, and that's really something.
Wow, that's really cool. So now that we've empowered the victim, how can we bring self-awareness and introspection to the book?
Well, I think by stop calling them a bully is our first step, because no one likes to be called a name. And when you think about it, it's name calling. It's the very thing we say we're against. We say, when you call people names, when you globally rate them, when you label them with a name, a pejorative term, bully or jerk or punk or loser, they don't like that. I would always get that name out of my head and say, I'm going to call them by their first name. And I'm going to know that they don't identify as a sociopath. They don't identify as an evil, emotional murderer, because that's what we view a bully as. They identify as a human. And so the first way to help them and empower them is to approach them as a human, not a bully humanoid. And I tell them, look, you're either trying to bother someone, you're trying to joke with someone, you're hurt by someone and you're retaliating, or you're trying to criticize them. So let me help you do that more effectively. If you're trying to bother them, you're really trying to lead. Bothering, that portion of aggression, is really a study of leadership. It's dominance behavior. They're trying to coerce someone. They're either trying to scare them or they're trying to incentivize them to do something. I'm not going to hang out with you if you hang out with them. Or, hey, if you want to be my friend, I'll let you play this Xbox. So it's a carrot or a stick. It's very primitive, very guerrilla-like. And so I say there's a better way to lead, through competency and service. Be really good at what you do and help other people be good at what they do. Don't take a carrot, a stick approach to it, scaring people with your stick or incentivizing them with your cool stuff. You're just trying to dominate through a very primitive form. So be a leader through competency and service. If you're joking, if you're a comedian, dude, save your jokes for people who can handle it. Your number one goal as a comedian is to make your audience laugh. But if the people you're making jokes about are crying, you're failing. So let's work on your comedy skills. If you're hurt, hey, stop playing the victim. Maybe you're a true victim and that needs to be addressed, but most of the time we play the victim. We took offense because our feelings are hurt. Dude, take responsibility for protecting your heart. It's the most important thing you'll do. Above all else, guard your heart. And if you're criticizing, do it in a way that the person you're helping improve can receive it. I call it a compliment sandwich. You're really good at this. I really think I admire you for this. This is a couple areas I think you can improve. And by the way, I think you're really good at this. You bookcase it with kindness. That's a better way to criticize. So to me, I don't even approach them as a bully. I approach them as a human who needs better social skills to get what they want.
Ooh, I like the part where you say that they're human, they're still a human, and if you're calling them a bully, you're a bully now because you're calling them names.
Yeah, you're a human who's hurting. I wouldn't even call you a bully. When we call people names, it's usually because we hurt. So that's the hurting motivation. And so you need to stop being hurt by them. You need to build up your emotional resilience or communicate. Hey, I'm mad at you because you did this. But I try to cure people of their tendency to be offended. And that seems to solve the problem.
Oh, so it's like people. That if
Yeah.
they're the victim, they want to make others the victim.
Yeah. And comedians hurt people, and dominators hurt people, and critics hurt people, and hurting people hurt people. So that phrase, hurting people hurt people, only fits for the hurting motivation. But there are other three that also have a tendency to hurt people. And I would say if we're going to be scientifically accurate, it's actually not that bothering, joking, criticizing, or hurting that hurts people. It's their perception, right? It's their belief that person has no right. So what I would say is hurting people contribute to hurting people. If you want to get really semantic and really psychologically accurate, no one actually hurts us emotionally, but they contribute to our hurting. But that's just psychology talk.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if I was listening to this podcast, I would immediately want to go and read your books and listen to your talks and play your game. How can our audience learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, well, Google my name, Brooks Gibbs, and go to YouTube, put it in there. You'll have hours of fun. Or you can go to my website, brooksgibbs.com.
Awesome. I hope our audience finds these links very helpful. Thank you so much, Brooks, for spending time with us today. I learned how to increase my resilience and the impact of our belief system and what we think. Thank you so much.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every Friday, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.